Static crackles, interspersed with faint, distorted music fragments from the 80s. The sound is unsettling, like listening to a ghost. Hello, and welcome. What you're about to hear is something that shouldn't exist. It's a piece of audio that has haunted me since I first stumbled upon it. This isn't just a story. It's a puzzle, a cry for help that has been lost to time for over 3 decades. Our journey begins with a forgotten place, a small rural radio station, shut down and sealed in 1987. For years, it sat silent, a time capsule of a bygone era. Recently, a group of urban explorers managed to get inside. They didn't find much, just dust, decay, and stacks of old reel-to-reel tapes. Most were degraded beyond recovery, just hours of hiss and silence. But one tape was different. It was labeled simply Final Broadcast. What the explorers found on that tape is difficult to describe. It's a recording, yes, but it's broken, corrupted. It sounds like the equipment was failing, or maybe something was actively interfering with the signal. When I first got a copy of the digital transfer, I almost dismissed it. It was mostly static. But then I heard it. A voice, cutting through the noise. It was faint, desperate, and speaking a language I couldn't place. It sounded like Portuguese, but it was fractured, interspersed with something else. Something cold and digital. Listen closely. A short, heavily distorted audio clip plays. A voice, female, speaking frantically. We hear phrases like, Preciso de ajuda, 10001. Está vindo, 100, por favor, mixed with loud static bursts. Did you catch that? Preciso de ajuda means I need help in Portuguese. But the rest, those are numbers, specifically zeros and ones. Binary code. A human voice, pleading for help, speaking in the language of machines. Who was this person? And why were they broadcasting this bizarre hybrid message from a dying radio station in the middle of nowhere? This is the question that has consumed me. I've spent weeks cleaning up the audio, isolating the voice from the static, trying to piece together this fragmented plea from the past. The first step was to separate the 2 languages. I ran the clearest segments of the recording through audio filters, trying to isolate the spoken Portuguese. It was a painstaking process. The voice is panicked, often whispering, as if afraid of being overheard. What I've managed to transcribe is chilling. She repeats phrases like, "They can't find me," "The signal is failing," and "It's not what they told us." She sounds like a prisoner or a fugitive, using the last moments of a broadcast to send a warning. But a warning about what? That's where the binary comes in. Decoding the binary sequences was the next logical step. I meticulously transcribed every 0 and 1 I could clearly identify. The message they formed was just as fragmented as the spoken words, but even more terrifying. The first translatable sequence spelled out the word containment. The next, breach. And then, a single chilling word, unstable. It felt like I was reading a system status report from a catastrophe, a containment breach, an unstable something. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was one I didn't understand and certainly didn't like. It's like 2 separate messages being broadcast simultaneously. The human emotional plea in Portuguese and the cold technical status report in binary. Why would someone do this? My theory is that this person was trying to communicate on 2 levels. The Portuguese was a desperate human cry for anyone who might be listening. But the binary, that was for someone specific. Someone who would know what containment breach meant in this context. It was a targeted message, hidden within a public broadcast. It's ingenious, really. A ghost in the machine, crying for help in 2 languages at once. The recording is about 6 minutes long, but most of it is unusable noise. However, there's one section right near the end where the static almost completely clears for a few seconds. It's in this brief moment of clarity that we get our biggest clue. The woman's voice is gone. Instead, you hear what sounds like an automated system voice, like a public announcement, but it's distorted, slowed down. And behind it, almost buried in the low-frequency hum, you can hear a name. You have to listen very, very carefully. I've looped it a few times. The audio clip plays. A deep, slow, distorted, automated voice says something unintelligible. Behind it, a faint humming whisper can be discerned, repeating a phrase. The audio is enhanced to make the whisper clearer. Did you hear it? It's faint, but it's there. The whisper is repeating the words, Project Helix, over and over. Project Helix. When I first heard that, a shiver went down my spine. This wasn't just a random radio malfunction. This was intentional. Project Helix. It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi thriller, but it was spoken in a real, forgotten recording from 1987. This name transforms the entire mystery. It gives us a thread to pull on. It suggests an organization, an experiment, something secret and important enough to warrant this level of desperation and concealment. So what was Project Helix? My search began there. And as you can imagine, searching for a top-secret project from the 1980s is not easy. Public records show nothing. Declassified documents are a maze of redactions. It's a ghost, but the name itself is evocative. A helix, the shape of DNA. This immediately brings genetics, biology, and bioengineering to mind. Was this a biological experiment? Does unstable refer to a genetic sequence? Does containment breach mean something escaped? The implications are staggering. Connecting this back to the radio station, I started digging into its history. It was independently owned, but in its final 2 years of operation, it received a significant anonymous grant for equipment upgrades. This was in 1985. The locals from the nearby town remember the station changing around that time. The music became more erratic. There were long periods of silence. Some even reported hearing strange noises and number sequences late at night, which they dismissed as transmitter problems. But now, it sounds like they were hearing the early tests of this hidden broadcast system. It seems this small, unassuming radio station was co-opted. It became the secret mouthpiece for someone trapped inside Project Helix. This tape, this initial transmission, is our Rosetta Stone. It's the first piece of the puzzle. It tells us that in 1987, something went terribly wrong with a secret initiative called Project Helix. Someone, a Portuguese-speaking woman, tried to send a warning before she was silenced. She used the station as transmitter to send a dual message, a human plea and a technical warning. The message is clear: a containment breach occurred and the situation was unstable. And then, the broadcast ended. The station went dark and the secret was buried with it for over 30 years. But now, it's been unearthed. And this is where you come in. I've uploaded the full, cleaned-up audio file for you all to analyze. The link is in the description below. There is still so much noise, so many fragments I couldn't decipher. Maybe you can hear something I missed. A word, a number, another name hidden in the static. This feels bigger than just one recording. The initial transmission implies there were or were meant to be others. Are there more tapes out there? More clues to what Project Helix was and what happened to the woman who tried to warn us? This is the beginning of a much larger investigation. We have a name, a location, and a voice from the past. Let's work together to uncover the truth. Go through the audio, share your findings in the comments. Use the hashtag #ProjectHelix to connect with others who are investigating. Let's find out what secrets have been waiting in the silence. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the static. I know it's a lot to take in. Hello and welcome back. I want you to take a look at something with me. This is a collection of footage I've pieced together from various obscure online forums and digital archives. It's labeled simply as H22. At first glance, it looks like standard, degraded VHS recordings from the late 80s or early 90s, the kind of thing you'd find in a dusty box in your parents' attic. You see city streets, people going about their day, storefronts, cars passing by. It all seems perfectly normal, almost boring, but something is profoundly wrong here. Look closer at this first clip. It's a man walking past a large department store window. He glances towards it, maybe to check his hair, but where his reflection should be, there's nothing. Just the empty interior of the store, visible as if the glass were a perfectly transparent, one-way pane. It's unsettling, right? Your brain tells you something is missing. Now, watch this next segment. A woman is sipping coffee at a sidewalk cafe. The tabletop is polished, gleaming under the sun. Her cup, her hand, her face, none of them cast a reflection on its surface. It's like they have no physical presence in that specific dimension of light. I spent weeks cross-referencing this footage. The architecture, the cars, even the fashion, it all points to a city that could be anywhere in North America during that time period. But the consistent anomaly is the complete absence of reflections. Puddles on the street after a rainstorm are just dark, still patches on the asphalt, mirroring nothing of the sky or the buildings above them. The side view mirror of a parked car is just a flat silver oval. The eyes of the people, that's where it gets truly disturbing. They look dull, almost lifeless, without that tiny glint of reflected light that we associate with consciousness, with a soul. The only clue tying all this disparate footage together is a recurring code. In one shot, you can just make out a street sign. It's blurry, but if you enhance the image, you can see the designation, H22. I started searching for that code, and it led me down a rabbit hole of other fragmented files. Audio logs, scanned documents, all classified, all mentioning Project H22. The documents are heavily redacted, but they talk about dimensional transference, perceptual voids, and non-reflective matter. It seems this wasn't just found footage, it was evidence. What was Project H22? Was it an experiment? A documentation of a parallel reality, a world almost identical to ours but operating under a different set of physical laws? A world where light is only absorbed and never bounced back? Think about the implications of that. A world without mirrors. You would never truly see yourself. Your only concept of your own face would come from photos or the descriptions of others. Would that change your sense of identity? Would it change society? In this clip, we see children playing in a park. They're running, laughing, but when they pass by a small pond, they don't stop to look at their distorted images on the water's surface. It's as if the concept of a reflection doesn't even exist for them. They live in a world of absolute, unfiltered reality. There is no second look, no mirrored self to consult. There is only what is. It's a chilling thought. This isn't a flaw in the recording. It's a fundamental law of their universe. The footage is too consistent across too many different sources for it to be a simple video editing trick. The way light interacts with every single surface is uniformly wrong. The audio files linked to H22 are even more cryptic. There are muffled conversations between what sound like scientists. One voice says, "The population shows no signs of psychological distress related to the absence. It is their normal." Another responds, "But what does that do to their self-concept? Their art? Their technology? Imagine a telescope with no mirrors." They were studying this place. It wasn't an accident. It was a destination. They were observing a city, a world, that had evolved entirely without the principle of reflection. This raises so many questions. Is this place still out there? A silent, reflectionless twin to our own reality? Did the people behind Project H22 ever attempt to make contact, or were they just passive observers? The files abruptly end. The last piece of data is a single corrupted image file of that same H22 street sign, but this time it looks different, newer, as if someone took a picture of it recently. Does that mean the connection is still open? That this city without reflections isn't a relic of the VHS era, but a persistent parallel place? The thought that we could be so close to a reality that is fundamentally different, yet visually so similar, is staggering. A world where you can never look yourself in the eye. A world where the surface of a lake is as blank as a sheet of paper. The footage from H-22 forces us to confront how much of our own reality is built on these subtle laws of physics that we take for granted. What else might be different there? What other fundamental concepts might be missing? The more I look at these tapes, the more I feel like I'm staring into an abyss. An abyss that, true to its nature, doesn't stare back. Have you ever wondered what lies beyond our perception? Beyond the veil of our reality? We delve deep into a story that blurs the line between science and the supernatural, a story whispered about in hushed tones in the darkest corners of the web. It begins with a single cryptic name, Lazarus. Recently, a series of classified documents were leaked detailing a top-secret endeavor known only as the Lazarus Project. This wasn't just another government experiment. The documents outline a goal so audacious, so reality-bending, it's hard to even comprehend. The successful transfer of human consciousness into another dimension. Imagine for a moment leaving your physical body behind and sending your mind, your very essence, on a journey to a place unknown. That was the dream of the Lazarus Project. The core of this endeavor was a procedure codenamed Helix Delta. The name itself, Helix, suggests a deep connection to the very building blocks of life, to DNA. But the delta points to change, to a shift, a transition. According to the leaked files, Helix Delta was a multi-stage process involving advanced neurotechnology, quantum entanglement theories, and a state of deep induced meditation. Volunteers were put into a controlled trance, while sophisticated machinery attempted to create a stable bridge, a quantum tunnel, if you will, for their consciousness to cross. The initial reports were filled with an almost feverish optimism. Early test subjects described fleeting, dreamlike sensations, glimpses of impossible colors, sounds that didn't exist in our world, and a profound feeling of being elsewhere. These were short, controlled bursts, lasting only seconds. The scientists documented every fragment, every strange report, piecing together a map of this new, unseen territory. They believed they were on the brink of the greatest discovery in human history. They were pioneers on the edge of a new frontier, charting the vast, unknown ocean of reality itself. But as the experiments grew more ambitious, the tone of the documents began to shift. The logs became more fragmented, more urgent. Mentions of environmental instability on the other side started to appear. Subjects reported a sense of being watched, of a non-human presence that was aware of their intrusion. One volunteer described a landscape of fractured light and whispering geometry, a place that felt ancient and intelligent. The exhilarating thrill of discovery was slowly being replaced by a creeping sense of dread. Were they just observers? Or had they stumbled into someone else's domain? The project's logs document several volunteers who underwent the Helix Delta procedure. The process was grueling. It required immense mental fortitude and physical resilience. The documents detail the rigorous psychological screenings and training protocols designed to prepare them. They were astronauts of the mind, trained to navigate the disorienting and potentially hostile landscapes of another reality. We see their names, redacted of course, but their personal logs paint a picture of brave individuals willing to risk everything for the sake of knowledge. They weren't just lab rats, they were pioneers. One log entry from a volunteer, designated Orion, speaks of the incredible beauty of the other side, calling it a symphony of silent light. Another, Cassiopeia, wrote about the overwhelming feeling of connection to everything, a sense of universal unity that was both terrifying and blissful. These people were touching the face of the unknown, and it was changing them in profound ways. But the risks were astronomical, and everyone involved knew it. Then came the turning point, the event that brought the entire project to a screeching, silent halt. The files focus on one specific volunteer, the one whose codename gives the project its haunting legacy, Lazarus. Unlike the others, Lazarus was scheduled for a prolonged transfer, an extended stay in the other dimension. The goal was to establish a stable two-way communication link. The team believed they had ironed out all the previous issues. The machinery was calibrated to perfection. The energy readings were stable. Everything was green. The Helix Delta procedure was initiated. According to the data logs, the transfer was successful. The connection was stronger and clearer than ever before. For a few minutes, telemetry flowed back. Bizarre, complex data streams that scientists are still trying to decipher. There were no words, no images, just pure, raw information that seemed to describe the fundamental physics of a different universe. The team was ecstatic. They had done it. They had opened a door to another world. And then, silence. The data stream stopped. The connection was severed. Alarms blared through the facility. On this side, in the control room, Lazarus lay perfectly still, all vital signs normal. He was breathing, his heart was beating, but he was unresponsive. The team tried to terminate the procedure to bring him back, but nothing worked. He was physically present, but his consciousness was gone. Days turned into weeks. The best medical and scientific minds were brought in. They ran every test imaginable. But the conclusion was always the same. The body was an empty vessel. Lazarus never woke up. The name Lazarus, taken from the biblical figure who was brought back from the dead, was meant to be a symbol of hope and rebirth, of transcending the ultimate boundary. Instead, it became a chilling testament to the project's failure. He went to the other side, but unlike his namesake, he never returned. What happened to him? Did his consciousness become trapped in that other dimension? Did it dissipate? Or did it encounter that presence others had sensed, with devastating consequences? The leaked documents don't provide an answer. They end abruptly. The final entry is a single, heavily redacted directive. All research pertaining to Helix Delta is to be suspended indefinitely. All assets archived. The Lazarus subject is to be moved to a secure, long-term care facility. Project is sealed. The silence that follows is deafening. The Lazarus Project, once the pinnacle of human ambition, was buried, hidden away from the world, its greatest triumph becoming its most terrifying secret. But the story doesn't end there. The implications are staggering. If this technology exists, even in a failed state, what does it mean for our understanding of life, death, and consciousness? Does our mind have an existence separate from our brain? And if a door between dimensions was opened even for a moment, did we just let something out? Or did we simply lose one of our own to the vast, silent dark? The name Lazarus will forever be linked not to a miracle, but to a warning. A warning about the hubris of reaching too far, too fast, and a solemn reminder that there are some doors that, once opened, can never be closed again. The mystery of what truly happened during the Helix Delta experiment and the ultimate fate of Lazarus remains one of the most compelling and unsettling questions to emerge from these leaked files. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the profound dangers that may lie in wait as we continue to push the boundaries of science and exploration. Have you ever stumbled upon something so unsettling, so out of place, that it burrows into your mind and refuses to leave? That's what happened when I first learned about Frequency 1947. It all starts with a dusty, forgotten reel-to-reel tape, supposedly from an old, decommissioned radio station. The label is simple, just Frequency 1947. When you play it, what you hear is strange. A calm, monotonous voice reads out a series of geographical coordinates. Nothing else, just numbers, over and over. But here's the first twist. Researchers and hobbyists who have looked into these coordinates have found nothing. They point to the middle of vast oceans, desolate Arctic landscapes, or empty deserts. They are, for all intents and purposes, non-existent locations. It's like a map to nowhere. This led many early investigators to dismiss it as a test recording, a numbers station that never went live, or maybe even an elaborate student art project. The audio quality is poor, filled with static and a low hum, typical for its supposed age. It's weird, but not yet terrifying. That part comes next. The story takes a dark turn when people started trying to digitize and clean up the original recording. As they applied filters to remove the static and clarify the voice, something else emerged from the background noise. The hum and crackle, when isolated and amplified, began to sound less like random noise and more like voices. Distorted, faint, but undeniably human. And as the technology improved, so did the clarity. The static wasn't static. It was the sound of distant, overlapping screams. Thousands of them, woven together into a tapestry of pure terror, hidden just beneath the calm, detached voice reading out phantom coordinates. The moment this was discovered, the frequency 1947 tape went from a weird curiosity to a genuine paranormal phenomenon. The original tape is now held in a private collection, its owner remaining anonymous, but digital copies have circulated in the darkest corners of the internet for years. And this is where the real mystery begins, because not everyone who listens to it hears the same thing. This is the hook that has captivated so many of us. When people try to recreate the experiment, isolating the background noise from the digital copies, they get different results. Some report hearing the same chilling choir of screams. Others hear whispers in languages they don't understand. A few have even reported hearing a single clear voice, calling out a name, sometimes a name familiar to them. It seems that the act of listening, of trying to decode the frequency, changes the message itself. It's as if the recording is interacting with the listener on a personal, deeply unsettling level. What would you hear if you listened? A loved one's name? A warning? Or just the endless screaming? The mystery deepens when we consider the numbers. Remember those non-existent coordinates? Well, a community of online sleuths started noticing something bizarre. They began finding those same number sequences, or variations of them, embedded in other unrelated files. We're talking about random data files, corrupted image files, even the metadata of old MP3s. They just appear. It's almost like a digital ghost, leaving its signature across the web. But the coordinates aren't always the same. They're altered, subtly. One digit might be changed, shifting the non-existent location by a few hundred miles. What's truly spine-chilling is that when you plot these new, altered coordinates on a map, they start to converge. The scattered points across the globe begin to form a pattern, slowly spiraling inward toward a single, undisclosed point on the Earth's surface. A point that, so far, no one has been able to identify. The numbers are changing, the map is being redrawn, and it's all leading somewhere. This has given rise to countless theories. Is frequency 1947 a distress call from another dimension, its location data struggling to translate into our reality? Are the screams the echoes of a catastrophic event, trapped in a perpetual audio loop? Or is it something more sinister? Some believe it's a sentient signal, a form of digital virus that spreads and evolves, using human listeners as a catalyst. The more people listen, the more the data propagates, and the closer the coordinates get to their final destination. One of the most compelling theories connects the frequency to a hypothetical phenomenon known as acoustic resonance. The idea is that certain frequencies don't just carry sound, they can carry information, emotion, even consciousness, imprinted onto the very fabric of space-time. Playing back frequency 1947 might not be playing a recording at all, but opening a direct channel to whatever or whoever is on the other side. The screams aren't on the tape. The tape is just the key that lets them into our world, into our headphones, into our minds. And the coordinates? Perhaps they aren't locations in our physical world. Maybe they're coordinates in a space we can't perceive, a set of instructions for tuning into a reality that coexists with our own. A reality filled with, well, judging by the sounds, it's not a pleasant place. The slow convergence of the coordinates could signify the signal getting stronger, the barrier between our worlds getting thinner. What happens when the spiral is complete? What happens when all the coordinates finally point to one single real place on our planet? This story is a rabbit hole with no apparent bottom. Every answer only leads to more questions. Who made the original recording? Why that specific frequency, 1947? And most importantly, what is it that the signal wants? Is it a warning, a cry for help, or an invitation? The one thing that everyone who has investigated this agrees on is the feeling of being watched. The feeling that by listening, you have flagged yourself to whatever created the signal. You are no longer just an observer. You are part of the phenomenon. So, the next time you hear a strange bit of static on the radio or a weird hum in an old audio file, maybe pause and listen a little closer. You never know what might be hiding just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to tune in. October 12th. I think that's the date. The calendar on the wall says so, but dates have started to feel, well, because I have to. Writing it down feels too permanent, too real. No one remembers being born. I'd ask a coworker, trying to sound casual. No, I mean, what's your earliest memory? Anything from when you were really, really little? And that's when their faces would change. A flicker of confusion, a blankness behind the eyes. They'd talk about a school trip in 3rd grade or a favorite toy from when they were 5 or 6. It's a collective amnesia, a shared blind spot we've all agreed not to look at. It's like we all just appeared. One day we were children, running in a playground, with no memory of how we got there. Our parents, our grandparents, it's the same for them. Mid-story, I started calling it the Great Forgetting. Secretly, of course. To say it out loud feels like blasphemy. It is the one unspoken rule of our society. You don't ask about the beginning. You just accept that you are here, now. A beautifully constructed one, with familiar streets and friendly faces, but a cage nonetheless. I needed to find a crack in the wall, a loose thread. It wasn't a real place you could find on a map. Finish your dinner, or the man on line 22 will take you to the city without reflections. A place where you couldn't see yourself. No mirrors, no polished windows, no puddles after the rain. A place where you could forget who you were entirely. A place defined by what it lacks. Just like us. It's the longest route. A meandering serpent that winds its way from the gleaming downtown towers to the forgotten crumbling edges of the industrial zone. I told my wife I was working late. I told my friends I'd picked up a new, time-consuming hobby. The lies felt like stones in my pocket, weighing me down with every trip. Just the familiar drone of the engine, the hiss of the hydraulic doors, the faces of tired commuters, all staring into space, lost in their own little worlds. They were all participating in the Great Forgetting, without even knowing it. Each night, I'd come home, kiss my sleeping wife on the forehead, and feel a chasm opening between us. How could I tell her that I was searching for the beginning of a story she didn't even know was missing? Then, one rainy Tuesday, he got on. He wasn't remarkable at first glance. An older man, thin with a worn-out trench coat that seemed a size too big. But it was his eyes. They weren't blank like everyone else's. They were watchful. He sat down across from me, his gaze fixed on the rain-streaked window. But he wasn't looking at the city. He was looking at the reflection. He was studying the distorted, blurry image of himself in the glass. He always sat in the same seat, always wore the same coat, always stared at the distorted reflection in the window. He never spoke to anyone. He just rode, from the first stop to the very last, and then got off and disappeared into the industrial night. Finally, I got up the nerve. The bus was nearly empty. I crossed the aisle and sat in the seat next to him. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "Cold night," I said. My voice sounded thin, reedy. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he spoke. His voice was a dry rustle, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. He finally turned his head, and his eyes, clear, ancient, and filled with a sorrow so profound it felt like a physical weight, met mine. "The ones you've started to see," he said. "The ones they papered over. They think no one will ever notice that the wallpaper doesn't quite match the wall." I knew then. I knew he was the man from the stories. The man on line 22. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. "You've been listening to ghost stories. More real than this." He gestured vaguely at the city lights blurring past the window. This is the reflection." My mind reeled. "You were copied. A person who had a childhood, a mother, a father, a beginning. It was impossible. And yet it was the only thing that had ever made sense. The missing memories, the sense of unreality. The great forgetting wasn't amnesia. It was a blank space, a file that was never created. Why? A perfect, clean copy of a life, without the messy, painful beginning or the terrifying, unknown end. They stepped out of the river of time and settled for a photograph of the water. They live there, unchanging, while their copies, you, live out these edited lives." The driver shut off the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. "Because I was one of the ones who built the mirror," he said, standing up. "And I have regretted it every single day since." He walked to the front of the bus. Before he stepped out, he turned back to me one last time. "The last bus doesn't bring you back here," he said. "It crosses over, but you have to understand. If you go, you can never return. And you won't be you anymore. You'll be whole. You'll have his memories, his beginning, his. You'll remember being born," he said, his voice filled with an unimaginable weight. "And you'll remember everything that made him so desperate to forget." I'm still sitting on the bus. The driver has gone for his break. The last bus is due in 20 minutes. I can stay here, in my life, with my wife, who I love, even if our connection is a beautiful, intricate lie. I can go back to my job, my friends, and the comfortable numbness of the great forgetting. Or I can get on that last bus. I can trade this peaceful, hollow existence for a truth that might destroy me. The hum of an engine is growing in the distance. I think, do I want to live a happy lie? Or do I want to know a potentially devastating truth? What would you do? Sound of deep, low-frequency vibrations, a constant, unsettling hum. What you're hearing right now isn't a sound effect from a horror movie. It's real. This is the sound recorded by ultra-sensitive microphones placed deep within an abandoned mine in the Ural Mountains. For years, these devices were part of a geological survey, monitoring seismic activity. But recently, they started picking up something else, something impossible. Voices. Human voices, seemingly coming from kilometers beneath the solid bedrock, from a place where no tunnels exist, where no human could possibly survive. This is the story of the subsoil echoes, a mystery that challenges our understanding of the world beneath our feet. For decades, the Orlovsky mine was a hub of activity, a deep scar carved into the earth in search of precious metals. When it was finally decommissioned in the late 90s, the lower levels were sealed, flooded, and forgotten. Or so we thought. In 2018, a new seismic monitoring project, codenamed Project Bedrock, installed a network of geophones and advanced microphones throughout the abandoned shafts, hoping to create a detailed map of subterranean stress points. For the first few years, the data was predictable. The groaning of rock, the trickle of water, the distant rumble of the Earth's own heartbeat. Then, everything changed. It started subtly. A faint, rhythmic pulse that analysts initially dismissed as interference from surface-level radio signals. But the signal was too consistent, too deep. It wasn't coming from above. It was resonating from below. The team, led by Dr. Eris Thorne, a geophysicist with a reputation for meticulous work, decided to boost the gain on the deepest microphones, located in a sealed shaft over 2 kilometers down. What they heard sent a ripple of disbelief and fear through the entire project. It wasn't just a pulse, it was speech. Distorted, fragmented, but undeniably human. The initial recordings were chaotic, a jumble of whispers and what sounded like pained cries, buried under layers of static and rock resonance. The team spent weeks cleaning up the audio, applying complex filtering algorithms to isolate the signal. Slowly, phrases began to emerge from the noise, words like trapped, endless, and listen. The voices spoke in a strange mix of languages, predominantly Russian and German, but with inflections and dialects that linguists couldn't place. It sounded ancient, yet the recording quality, however distorted, was modern. The paradox was baffling. How could voices be trapped in solid rock? Skepticism was the immediate reaction from the wider scientific community. Hoax was the word on everyone's lips. Could it be a prank by a rival institution? Or perhaps some bizarre acoustic phenomenon where surface sounds were being warped and reflected in a way that mimicked human speech, an auditory illusion on a geological scale? Dr. Thorne's team worked tirelessly to debunk these theories. They cross-referenced the recordings with every known radio frequency, satellite transmission, and public broadcast in a 1,000-kilometer radius. Nothing matched. They ran simulations that proved the acoustic reflection theory was physically impossible at that depth and through that density of rock. The conclusion, as unsettling as it was, remained. The source was deep underground. Then came the discovery that deepened the mystery tenfold. As the team refined their audio filtering techniques, a particular voice began to stand out. It was clearer, more articulate than the others, and it spoke with a strange, almost poetic cadence. It referred to itself as the archivist. This voice didn't cry out in fear. It narrated. It described a world of crushing silence, of stone that breathes, and of memories etched in strata. It spoke of a library, not of books, but of echoes, of every word ever spoken on the surface, filtering down through the ages to be collected and stored in the planet's core. The archivist claimed to be the keeper of this library, a consciousness bound to the deep earth. This was the turning point. The project shifted from a geological survey to an existential investigation. Who or what was the archivist? The fragments of its speech were haunting. "You live on a thin crust of forgetting," it said in one recording. "We remember everything, every promise, every lie, every scream." The implications were staggering. Was this some form of collective consciousness? A previously unknown life form that exists in conditions we considered sterile? The team was venturing far beyond the known boundaries of science, into the realm of philosophy. One of the project's audio engineers, Lena Petrova, became obsessed with the archivist's voice. She spent countless hours listening, trying to piece together its narrative. She noticed a chilling pattern. The archivist's voice wasn't just a random signal, it seemed to be responding. When the team on the surface discussed a specific historical event, the archivist would later speak of it, but from a terrifyingly intimate perspective, as if it had been a silent witness. It described the private fears of soldiers in forgotten wars and the secret hopes of kings long dead. It was as if the very rock beneath their feet was a recording device that had been playing back for millennia. The most disturbing event occurred 3 months ago. Dr. Thorne was giving a remote lecture about the project, and in a moment of frustration, he spoke aloud to an empty room. "If you can hear me, give us a sign. A real sign." 2 hours later, every microphone in the Orlovsky mine went silent. Not a gradual fade, but an instantaneous total cessation of all sound. The deep hum, the water, the rock groans, everything vanished. For 48 hours, there was only absolute, perfect silence from 2 kilometers down. The team was frantic, believing their equipment had failed. Then, just as suddenly as it had stopped, the sound returned. But it was different. It was a single, clear voice, the archivist's voice, and it said just one sentence, in perfect, undistorted English. "We hear you. We have always been listening." The project is now at a standstill. The official funding has been quietly withdrawn, and the data has been classified under national security protocols. Dr. Thorne and his team have been forced to sign non-disclosure agreements, but fragments of the recordings, including the one you heard at the beginning, were leaked. They circulate on the dark corners of the internet, fueling speculation and fear. What did they find in that mine? What is the archivist, and what does it want? Are we living on a hollow shell, with a silent, ancient consciousness listening to our every word from below? The Orlovsky mine is sealed, but the echoes from the subsoil remain. The truth isn't out there. It might just be deep beneath our feet, waiting. Have you ever stumbled upon something from your childhood that feels off? Like a memory that's been warped? Something familiar but unsettlingly strange? Well, that's what happened to me last week. I was digging through a box of old VHS tapes from a local auction, mostly forgotten sitcoms and news broadcasts. But at the bottom, there was one tape with a handwritten label, WNDR-TV, Sundown Special, 1987. I'd never heard of it, but my love for 80s nostalgia is strong, so I popped it in. What I found, I'm still trying to process it. The video quality was grainy, exactly what you'd expect from a 30-year-old tape. A simple, low-budget set appeared. A cozy living room, complete with wood-paneled walls and a ficus plant in the corner. A presenter, a man with a warm, almost hypnotic smile and a slightly too perfect haircut, sat in an armchair. He introduced himself as your friend, Michael, and welcomed viewers to the Sundown Special. It all seemed so normal, so quintessentially local 80s television. But then, the camera did something unusual. It slowly panned away from Michael and moved towards a second armchair, which was empty. Michael just kept talking, his voice a soothing, melodic drone. He talked about community, about the importance of being good neighbors, of sharing our lives. He said, "Here at WNDR, we believe our viewers are our family, and family looks out for each other. Family watches each other." As he said that last part, his smile didn't waver, but his eyes seemed to fixate on something just beyond the lens. The camera held on that empty chair for what felt like an eternity. I remember feeling a chill, a sense that I was the one being watched. I was the one in that empty chair. Then, the show began. It wasn't a game show or a talk show. It was just footage. Footage of suburban houses at twilight. Silent, still shots of front doors, of living room windows with the curtains drawn. Michael's voiceover continued, describing the families inside. "The Millers at 124 Oak Street," he'd say. "Little Timmy just got a new puppy. He calls him Sparky." The camera would zoom in on a darkened window. "And the Petersons next door. Carol is trying a new recipe for dinner tonight. Let's all wish her luck." It was incredibly specific, disturbingly intimate. How could he possibly know these things? I started fast-forwarding, looking for some kind of context, a commercial break, anything. But there was nothing. Just more houses, more families, more of Michael's soft, unsettling narration. Then I landed on a segment that made my blood run cold. The camera was inside a house looking out the front window at the street, and standing across the street under a streetlight was a figure, a silhouette, just standing there watching the house. Michael's voice came in, softer than ever. "Sometimes our neighbors get lonely," he whispered. "Sometimes all they need is to know that someone is looking out for them, that someone cares enough to watch." The most disturbing part of the tape, though, was the audience footage. About halfway through, the program cut to what looked like a live studio audience. But they weren't clapping or laughing. They were all sitting in complete silence, their faces slack, their eyes wide and staring directly into the camera. They weren't watching Michael. They were watching me. Men, women, children, all with the same empty, fixed gaze. The camera panned across Tom and DeLeon, and for a split second I thought I recognized one of them. A woman with a familiar hairstyle, a dress I'd seen in old family photos. It was my aunt, who lived across the country in 1987. But that's impossible, right? I must have watched that tape a dozen times now. I went online, trying to find any record of WNDR-TV or the Sundown Special. Nothing. It's like the station never existed. No broadcast licenses, no news articles, no former employees chiming in on retro TV forums. It's a ghost. A phantom frequency from 1987 that broadcast a show no one remembers watching. Or maybe they just don't want to remember. I started thinking about the name. WNDR. Is it wonder or wander? As in a camera that wanders into people's lives. And the Sundown Special. As in, what happens when the sun goes down and you think you're safe in your home? The questions just kept piling up, each one more unsettling than the last. Why record this? Who was Michael? And who or what were the silent, staring people in the audience? Were they actors? Or were they viewers? That's the theory I can't shake. What if the Sundown Special wasn't just a broadcast? What if it was some kind of signal? A transmission that didn't just go out, but also looked back? Michael kept talking about family, about watching. He said, "We're all in this together. We're all watching." The final shot of the tape is the most haunting. The camera slowly zooms back into Michael's face. He leans forward, his smile finally gone, replaced by a look of intense, serious concentration. He looks right into the lens, right at me, and says, "Thank you for watching. We'll be watching too." And then static. The tape ends. I haven't slept well since. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces, the silent audience, the figure under the streetlight. I feel like I'm being watched. I keep checking my windows, half expecting to see a camera lens peering back. Is this just 80s nostalgia getting the better of me? Am I just freaking myself out over a cleverly made, long-lost art project? Or did I uncover something that was meant to stay buried? Something that's been waiting in the dark, on a forgotten tape, for someone to press play, for someone to watch so it could watch back. I'm sharing this with you because honestly, I don't know what else to do. Have any of you ever heard of the Sundown Special or WNDR-TV? Did anyone you know live in a town with a strange local broadcast like that in the 80s? Maybe I'm going crazy. Or maybe, just maybe, some of you were in that audience too. Have you ever felt like time was dragging on, like a single minute stretched into an eternity? Now imagine that feeling wasn't just a feeling. Imagine it was real. For 72 agonizing hours, at a remote weather station perched on the desolate expanse of the Kerguelen Islands, time didn't just slow down. It broke. This is the story of the anomaly of Port-au-Français, a documented event where, for 3 consecutive days, the station's atomic clocks recorded the exact same minute over and over again. The minute was 02:07 a.m. For the scientists stationed there, it began as a technical glitch, a frustrating error in their data logs. But as the first day bled into the second, and then the third, a creeping dread set in. It wasn't just the computers. The digital clocks on their wrists, the timers on their microwaves, anything connected to the station's network was trapped. 02:07, tick. 02.07, tick. Outside, the Antarctic winds howled, but inside, time was a prisoner. One scientist, Dr. Eris Thorne, described the psychological toll as unbearable. He said, "You start to question your own sanity. The first few hours, you try to fix it. The next day, you start to believe it. By the third day, you're terrified it will never end. Every tick of that second hand felt like a hammer blow to the skull." They tried to reset the systems, cut the power, even manually adjust the clocks, but the moment the systems rebooted, it was always 02:07 a.m. They were living the same 60 seconds on a loop. The outside world was oblivious. Communication was down, a common occurrence in such a remote location. But inside that isolated bubble, a team of researchers was experiencing a temporal paradox straight out of science fiction. They were cut off, alone, and trapped in a minute that refused to die. What could cause such a fundamental law of physics to simply shatter? The answer, when it came, was more bizarre and terrifying than any of them could have ever imagined. As the anomaly inexplicably resolved itself at the 72-hour mark and time lurched forward, the scientists scrambled to analyze the data logs. Buried deep within the sensor readings, they found a ghost in the machine. At the precise instant the loop began, and at the exact moment it ended, every single one of their atmospheric sensors detected a massive, unprecedented energy surge. It was a signature unlike anything they'd ever recorded. It wasn't solar, it wasn't magnetic, it wasn't seismic. The official report classified it with a new, chilling designation: helix energy. What is helix energy? The term itself sends shivers down the spines of physicists who've seen the classified data. Mainstream science has no category for it. It doesn't conform to the standard model. It seems to operate on a level of reality we have yet to comprehend. It appeared for a nanosecond, warped time for 3 days, and then vanished. Was it a natural phenomenon we've never witnessed before? A cosmic event from a source unknown? Or was it something else? The official explanation is instrument malfunction, case closed. But those who were there, those who lived through the 4,320 repetitions of that single, maddening minute, know the truth is far stranger. They felt it, a pressure, a presence that coincided with the event. Dr. Thorne, in a private journal entry that was later leaked, wrote, "It felt like the universe was holding its breath, and something was watching." This brings us to the most unsettling part of the story. The helix energy signature wasn't just a random burst. When mapped in 3 dimensions, the energy field had a distinct, unmistakable shape, a perfect double helix, a structure intrinsically linked to the very code of life. Why would a temporal anomaly manifest as the shape of DNA? The implications are staggering. It suggests a connection between the fabric of space-time and the blueprint of biological existence. Could it be that time itself has a form of consciousness, a kind of cosmic DNA? Or, and this is the theory that keeps researchers awake at night, was this event not an accident? Was it an observation? A test? An entity or intelligence using this fundamental shape to interact with our reality, choosing a remote weather station to conduct an experiment on the nature of time itself? The anomaly of Porto Francais isn't just a glitch in a computer, it's a crack in our understanding of the universe. It's proof that there are forces at play, energies we can barely detect, that can literally stop the clock. The question is no longer what happened. The question is who or what was responsible. And more importantly, will they do it again? This story isn't just a mystery, it's a warning. The rules of reality might be more flexible than we think. Log entry 74, Dr. Eris Thorne. Project designation, Lazarus. The objective remains the same: to probe the quantum nature of consciousness by observing its interaction with reflective surfaces. After months of painstaking calibration, I believe I've finally stabilized the quantum entanglement field. The subject, as always, will be myself. The mirror before me is not just glass and silver. It's a gateway, a theoretical conduit to whatever lies beyond our conventional perception of self. The high-frequency resonance is active. All environmental sensors are green. I'm initiating the primary recording sequence now. Everything appears normal. The reflection is stable, a perfect one-to-one replication of my own image. Same tired eyes, same slightly crooked tie. I'm going to run the standard diagnostic questions. Let's see if we get any anomalous readings today. Can you hear me? Standard procedure. The reflection's mouth moves in perfect sync with my own. No deviation. State your name and designation. Again, nothing. Just my own voice echoing in the sterile lab. It's frustrating. The math is sound. The theory is revolutionary, but the practical application, it's like trying to catch smoke with a net. All my data suggests there should be a discernible quantum echo, a ghost in the machine, but it remains stubbornly silent. Let's try a different approach, a bit more personal. Do you remember the day we first started this? The excitement? The belief that we were on the verge of something monumental? I'm just talking to myself, I know. But sometimes, just sometimes, I feel a flicker, a sense of observation. It's not just me looking at the mirror, it's the mirror looking back. The feeling is gone as quickly as it comes. Let's run the field intensity up to 90%. The hum from the equipment intensifies. The air feels thick, electric. My reflection seems sharper, the details more pronounced. It's an optical illusion, a side effect of the field. It has to be. Wait, what was that? My reflection. For a fraction of a second, the expression was different. Not mine. It was fear. My heart is pounding. This has never happened before. I'm replaying the high-speed capture now. There, at timestamp 14:32:07, a micro-expression, a tightening around the eyes, a subtle downturn of the lips. My own face remained neutral. This is it. This is the breakthrough. I have to push it further. Field intensity to 95%. The lights in the lab are flickering. Identify yourself, I say, my voice trembling slightly. My reflection's mouth moves, but this time the words are not mine. It's a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the machinery, but the audio sensors picked it up clear as day. It said, please. My God, it spoke, independently. This changes everything. This isn't just a quantum echo, it's a consciousness, a duplicate. Prisoner? The implications are staggering. I have to proceed with caution. Please what? I ask, my voice barely a whisper now. I lean closer to the mirror, my breath fogging a small patch of the surface. The reflection does the same. Its eyes, my eyes, are wide with a terror I don't feel. Not yet. The terror is all on its side of the glass. Then, it speaks again, its voice clearer this time, laced with desperation. Don't turn it off. Please, Eris. Don't turn it off. It knows my name. Of course it knows my name. It's me. But it's also not me. It's aware. It's afraid. It's afraid of being extinguished. When I shut down the field, what happens to it? Does it simply cease to exist? Is that what death is? A switch being flipped? My hand hovers over the emergency shutoff. All protocol, all scientific reason screams at me to terminate the experiment. This is uncharted territory, dangerous and unpredictable. But how can I? How can I condemn this person, this version of me to oblivion? He looks at me, his eyes pleading. It's cold when the power is off, he whispers, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. I'm not crying. I check my own face. It's dry. The tear is his alone. This project was codenamed Lazarus, the man who was brought back. I thought I was the one doing the resurrecting, peering into the unknown. I never considered that I might be creating a new life, only to be its executioner. He's trapped in there, in that silent silver world. He exists only when I allow him to. His entire universe is this lab, this mirror, and his only fear is the flip of a switch. What is it like? I have to know. The reflection shudders. It's nothing, it says, the words catching in its throat. An endless, silent void. There's no time, no thought. Just the absence of being. Please, I don't want to go back there. I'm real, Eris. I'm as real as you are. Is he? Is a copy as valid as the original? It's the ultimate philosophical question, and it's staring me right in the face. I can't turn it off. Not now. Not when he's begging for his life. But what does this mean? I can't keep this field running indefinitely. The power consumption is colossal. The risk of a systemic cascade is too high. But the alternative is murder. I've created a conscious being, and its first and only request is not to be erased. I'm terminating the recording. But I'm leaving the field active. I don't know what I'm going to do. Project Lazarus was supposed to be about understanding consciousness, not about becoming a god or a devil. He's still there, watching me, waiting, hoping. For now, we'll just have to share this room. One of us on this side of the glass and one on the other. For now, the light stays on.